I'd like to call the Benicia Unified School District Board for board meeting for October 3rd to order. Let's start with everybody please standing and let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. We did roll call.
Yes, I missed it.
Yeah. Okay, I need to start with calling for a motion to approve the agenda as written, please.
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We have a lot of guests in the audience tonight. Our students are all from Benicia High School. And whose history class are you from? Or government?
Leadership.
Leadership, okay. Because I know they said some of them before that they're going to need to get our signatures, so be prepared, everybody, okay? So, all right. So we're going to start with our highlight tonight, which I understand is Liberty High School. Dr. Young.
That's right. Thank you very much. Welcome, trustees, and everybody who had an opportunity to join us this evening. I'd like to welcome Principal Lewis to the podium to share some of the highlights of the wonderful things that are taking place at Liberty High School. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President Frucci, trustees, Superintendent Young. I am very excited to be here tonight to give you a little bit of a highlight that it's been happening at Liberty High School. We've been busy, to say the least. One moment. This is for you to say, I'll turn it on. I'm gonna make sure I turn it on. Three things that we're starting to focus on, or intentionally focusing on at Liberty, is our building relationships, wellness, and creating more student voice. And so for the past month, we've been targeting these specific areas. So the first thing, building relationships. I'm very pleased that this week we held our very first parent focus meeting. And we had coffee and donuts, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I had close to a dozen parents show up. And we just had a great time just talking. And I asked them a few questions. Tell me something, a strength or a skill that I should know about your child. And some of the quotes that they gave us were, the strongest kid I've ever known, cares for others, smart, funny, weird, in a good way. They had to make sure that they knew it was a good way, and full of potential. And one of the things that I kept hearing from my parents was like, I am so glad I'm not alone. I'm so glad I'm hearing your stories. And just talking to them and asking them, what can we do more for you as a parent? How can we help you and your child? And they gave us a lot of great feedback. And Dr. Young was there. I have to say, it was one of them, a very enriching conversation. They didn't want to leave. And I was like, I want to honor your time. It's been over an hour. And they just sat and talked with each other for a good another 20 minutes or so. And so they're networking with each other, getting each other's phone numbers, saying, hey, I have this resource. It was wonderful. And so, and then I elicited, what other topics would you like to learn more about? And they want to know everything from how do I talk to my kid more, and then vaping was a big issue they wanted to bring up, and unity and accepting of diversity and our LGBTQ plus community. So they gave me a lot of homework myself. So I was very pleased with the turnout, and thank you again, Dr. Young, for being there. Next. I learned about this just recently, and I'm very excited that partnering with our adult ed, with June Regis, that we are bringing a wellness center. It'll be located at our site. It's a place where students and parents will have workshops. Let me back up. I'm sorry. A place where there can be calm, yoga, workshops, learning center, a place where kids can just relax, take a breath. And we're going to be working on bringing topics and help for our students there so they can get for academic stress, nutrition, health, communicating. Maybe that's that place where parent and child can be, where it's a safe space for them to talk. So we're just at the baby steps of this. We're just worked with, I heard with June today about getting the paperwork started, but I'm incredibly excited. It's going to be located right in our portable in room 8. So I look forward to actually giving you more updates as I learn more about it. This is one of our big initiatives that I was very excited to continue, and actually big steps have already happened this year. It's our Learning Through Interest program, where we're creating that spark for our students. And this is where student voice comes in, where students say, I'm interested in, and we're listening, and we've been working with our kids. And from there, we've set up these little mini walks, learning tours. We've already partnering with Sustainable Solano. Our students went around that were interested in sustainable gardens. And this is one of our parents' backyards where they learned about sustainable growth in agriculture. We had career day at the Oakland A's where they got to talk to the front office staff. We've had some hands-on with trade schools, and one of the pictures I couldn't get up there, they actually visited a construction site in San Francisco. And this one was really, really popular, the culinary arts. So we were able to just kind of poke our heads in windows and look at different, from one end of First Street, we walked up to the other end. We ended up at Pizza Pirate with an alumni who helps run the Pizza Pirate. And they got to learn about food handling, how the back of the kitchen works. They were excited because they got to make their own pizzas. And what I enjoyed about this is that after all these tours and walks, there's next steps. We're going to be continuing their journey. So maybe it's over to DVC next, or looking at sustainable farming. And after each one of these, they went to the Benicia Public Library, and working with Brandy at the teen division, they checked out books based on what they were learning about. So we were happy because we had 6 books checked out yesterday, so we're really proud of that. Looking forward, we'd like to continue our partnership with the Benicia Public Library, how we can expand those learning walks more and link them more to the library. We are still promoting our learning walks, but bringing in more guest speakers. The parent group was like, absolutely, I know I can't come, but I know somebody who's willing to come in and talk to your students. I'm like, absolutely, yeah, awesome. Developing a workshop series based upon our parent feedback, addressing those vaping issues, addressing the unity and diversity issues, and renewing our application for California Model Continuation School. That's kind of like the heavy lift this year for myself. So that's, I look forward to that process. So that's our highlight for Liberty. Like I said, it's only been a month. How can it only be October? But thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to reports, and we're going to start with our students, or student.
So this week we have a home game tomorrow versus Mount Diablo. For this home game, we have Coach Holden invited a bunch of students from all schools in the Benicia Unified School District to come be represented. So the elementary schools and the middle schools, they picked various students for differing reasons. I'm not too sure what the reasons are. We'll find out tomorrow. But JV at 5:30 and varsity at 7. On Saturday, we're sending our band off to Del Mar for a band review, and the SATs on Saturday. Next week, we start homecoming week, which is a very busy week. On Monday, it's Oz the Great and Powerful, so wear green or bling. Tuesday's Twister Tuesday, so we're going to dress wacky. Wednesday is Which is Which is Twin Day. Thursday's Lions, Tigers, and Bears, so dress like an animal or jungle themed. Friday is There's a Storm Coming, and we're going to dress in blue and gold. We also have a rally, and we'll have our home game against College Park that day. So we'll have our homecoming court, like the king and queen will be announced. And then our homecoming dance is October 12th. 8 to 11. October is, also we have our homecoming carnival on Wednesday, October 9th, so you guys are welcome to come. It's a community event. It's taking place on our varsity baseball field from 4:30 to 7:30. It's just $5 to get in. And then October is National Bullying Prevention Month. So this year, Miss K has ordered orange shirts that we are selling. And then they're going for Unity Day. So on October 23rd, we're gonna be dressing up for Unity Day to promote bullying prevention. And then our school is starting college application labs for seniors. That's taking place on October 23rd till November 20th.
Well done.
Thank you very much. We're going to have our superintendent's report, and then we'll dismiss our students. So
Okay.
we are good to go.
Thank you. Just a quick couple of items. I did want to recognize and welcome one of our partners in the work that we do with the city councilman, Steve Young. Welcome. To see you. So a couple of points there. I met with the PTA presidents last week. It's something I like to do once a month, to check in with them and find out what's going on at the school site. So it's a good opportunity to talk to them. I did have a chance to talk to them about the area trustee work we're doing, and we'll have our second hearing this evening. Dr. Beetson and I and Dr. Moss met with our African-American group for the second time this year, and that partnership with them and that work continues to take shape, I think, in specific ways as we move forward to help our students. I had the first meeting of the year with the BTA site union reps. We did that, I think it was last week, and I always very much enjoy that. It's an opportunity to listen to the concerns and the issues that are out there. So we're partnering as we go forward. And I think it was last week, and Trustee Zeta was there, and Trustee Ferrucci was there as well at the Solano County Office of Education. They had the State of Solano Education Breakfast Forum, and it was a nice event. And what they did is they focused on career and technical education programs at all of the school districts, and we got to focus on an area. We picked our medical careers pathway, and somebody from the county office came out and did a fabulous job filming the principal and the teacher and some students, and that program was great. The video is very slick. So Ms. Martina, it just dawned on me that we'll talk and make sure that we have that link on the website. So if it's not already there, it might be, but we'll talk so people can take a look at that. It's very well done. So that's it from your superintendent.
All right, thank you. Okay, if our student would like to go, she may.
Good evening.
Okay, now I'll turn to our trustee report. So we're going to start with Ms. Moss.
Just to kind of follow up with Dr. Young, I had the opportunity to meet with some of the parents from our African American parent group. It actually was a group of moms that had formed a group a few years back called the Benicia African American Moms, and basically coming together to look at some of the issues and concerns that the students were facing. And so just being able to continue the dialogue is kind of what the follow-up was on last week, excuse my voice, as well as looking at some of the test scores, and also facing the fact that many of the students have not been doing very well, declining scores just throughout. So really trying to look at some of the things that we can do to provide better support systems. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Zeta.
Hello. I've had a busy 2 weeks, really busy 2 weeks with our kids and our teachers. I attended the Finding Kind movie that was shown at the Benicia High School. It was shown twice on the same day. Some students attended during the day. In the evening, didn't have as many people from around Benicia. It was open to everybody, all schools, all kids. But it was a good film, and it had a good message, and I was glad to be there. They're also looking into getting another video that's a little more updated that they will purchase, I guess, the district will purchase, and then the elementary schools and such will be able to borrow the video to show to a classroom, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a great opportunity that we'll have. They had at Joe Henderson, they had the Just Say Hello week, which was awesome. So I was at the assembly, the kickoff assembly for that, and that was fun. And then I got to go back today because they had bingo. They had some kind of an event every single day this week that was part of the Just Say Hello week. Like yesterday, they dressed in luau, kind of Hawaiian, garb, and then they put a big paper sign or something up, and the kids were able to write on it. It was really good. So I spent a lot of time with kids today talking. I had kids reach out to kids that didn't have a buddy, and it was really so fun to be a part of. Let's see. I went to Mary Farmer and helped out with their students that walked to school, because we have a walk to school day. I guess it's all over. It's not just
Right.
yesterday.
Right.
And so I was able to hand out prizes, and that was fun. And it was nice to see the kids that took the effort to come and do that. Then let's see, Joe Henderson, we did that. And then I just wanted to remind everybody that tomorrow they are doing a thing at the football game. It's called Friday Night Panther Stars. So they requested 6 to 8 students from each different school that will be on the field tomorrow and introduced, and I think that's going to be fun. I'll be there. I'm going to drag my husband. And finally, I have really exciting news. When I did the March for Our Lives in March of last year, we ended up with a chunk of money that was left over, and that was about $2,300. And what we did is I have partnered with my husband, along with the Kyle Highland Foundation, the Teen Center, and we're putting together a scholarship that will be given to kids, offered to kids either through Liberty or through Benicia High School. And the first year is going to be related to gun violence, because that's the stipulation that we have to kind of follow for that money that was left over. After that, my husband and I are going to continue that that scholarship, along with whoever else wants to donate to it, and we're going to do this every single year.
Oh.
So I'm so excited. Alan, you ran with it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay. Trustee Ms. Ellie?
Nothing really to add. She did all the stuff. So
She worked hard for all of us this week. That was good. Trustee Hogan?
Unfortunately, I was sick and missed a bunch of appointments this week. The one thing I would like to add is that I was really impressed with Joe Henderson's Custodian Day appreciation, and thought it was wonderful that they had the children all sign a banner and that was given to their custodians, and really recognizing the work that those individuals do to maintain the school on an ongoing, everyday kind of basis. And so that was a fantastic little event they had there.
Okay. Well, I too was rather low key these last couple of weeks, as well as I have been for a while. But I did get to go to the district curriculum council meeting with Dr. Beatson, and it was really kind of fun because I got to see a lot of teachers that have returned from previous years. So that was really good to see. And then we had some new teachers join the team. Had some good conversations with several people that were there. One of them sitting there who's shaking her head. We talked a lot about some of the data that was going on in our district. We also talked a lot about all the different programs that are kicking off because of this grant work that we have going on. It was amazing to see that all of these pockets, these committees are working on was it 9 different areas in order to support our kids in the district. And some of them are off and running already, and some of them are coming up behind to get ready to do kickoff. And we also talked a little bit about our partnership with Benicia, the city of Benicia, where really it's going to be about Benicia Reads, or, I'm not sure what we're calling it yet, but that's what just happened to come to my brain. So Benicia Reads, and they talked about some different activities that will go on with the community members as well. So there were lots of exciting news to share, and I'm sure we'll get some detail and accurate information when she does her presentation. But it was a great day, and I was really glad I got to do that. And then, being able to represent the school district up at Solana was also really nice. That was a good day. Okay, so with that said, we're going to move on. So I'm just going to well, let's do some comments, and then I just want to do a little explanation of our meeting for the sake of all our students that are in the audience. Is everybody okay with that? Okay, so what we do at this point is there's comments from the public that are allowed to happen right now, but then we're going to go into what we call a public hearing. So I'm going to technically close the board meeting, and I'm going to reopen it as a public hearing because we're in the process of exploring the idea of changing our voting structure for the trustees into areas versus being at large. So you'll learn a little bit more about that as our attorneys and our representatives come forward to explain that. So, and then once that happens and everybody has a chance to comment during that, then I will close that public hearing and then reopen the board meeting. Okay, so you're going to hear a lot of gavel banging going, but I just want to share what's going on. And some of our, don't be alarmed, it's really okay. So some of our folks, our teachers have been here, so they know what's going to be happening. But we have to do this, and it has to be in a public hearing format. And we've taken advantage of lining them up to our board meetings because we're working on our timeline, and it's easier for everyone, and it's more convenient and giving us easier access. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to now go to comments from the public. Members of the public may address the board at a regular meeting on any item within the board's jurisdiction. Cards may be completed requesting to address the board. They are available at the back table and may be submitted to the board secretary at the meeting. The governing board allows speakers to speak at regular meetings on agendized and non-agendized matters under public comment. Comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker. By law, no action may be taken on any item raised during public comment periods, and matters may be referred to staff for placement on a future agenda of the board. With that, do we have any public comments? All right, having none, we're going to move on to number 11, which is the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine and will be approved by the board in one motion. There will be no discussion on these items unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items be pulled or discussed. So with that said, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move that we approve these consent calendar as written.
I second it.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent calendar passes. Okay, we are going to move on to item 12, which is the public hearing. So board meeting is closed, and I'm going to open up the public hearing. And the public hearing is regarding the composition of potential trustee voting areas that are associated with the district transition from by-trustee area election system in advance of the preparation of our draft voting area. So gentlemen.
Good to see everyone. Good evening, trustees, Dr. Young, cabinet, staff, community. I'm Jonathan Salt with Fagan Friedman Fullfrost, and I'm joined by Andrew Chittapong of Cooperative Strategies. They are the demographic firm helping with this transition. Tonight's meeting is fairly identical to the previous one, and then soon thereafter, maps will be created and released to the public for public comment as well. A little bit of background again, that the California Voting Rights Act, or CVRA, essentially it prohibits at-large elections if those elections impair the ability of members of protected classes from influencing the outcome of an election. If that is the case, it will be a violation of the California Voting Rights Act. A key issue here is that unlike the Federal Voting Rights Act, the CVRA is far broader. It doesn't require intent. So a city or a school district doesn't need to be intending to discriminate in order to violate the California Voting Rights Act. So it's very easy to bring a claim against the city or a school district. And one of the key reasons why many school districts and cities are transitioning is because the law permits a prevailing plaintiff. So basically the person who's suing the school district or suing a city, it permits them to recover their attorney's fees and their expert fees. But if a school district or a city were to win, they're not entitled to that same right. And so we've seen public entities around the state settle and spend millions and millions of dollars and still have to transition. The only way to prevent, or the only safe harbor right now from a claim of CVRA violation, is to transition to a by-trustee area election method, where the district is divided, since there's 5 trustees, into 5 roughly equal population areas, where a board member will be elected from each trustee area only by the voters who live within a particular trustee area. Doesn't affect anybody's current terms. All trustees serve out their full terms regardless of where they live. So right now we are in the second step of this process. The first step occurred earlier this month when the board started the initiated this process. We're now in the middle. This is our second of 2 public hearings prior to drawing draft maps. So I'll hand it off to the demographer to give a little background on the demographics.
So on the screen, we do have the district's demographics using the 2010 census. We do have to use the 2010 census because those were the last official recorded numbers by the government where every single person was counted. On the left, you see a map of Benicia Unified and the cities that encompass it, just as a reference. And then on the table, you see the total population within the school district, and that number comes out to be 27,133, roughly about 27,000. If we divide that by 5 for each of the board members, each area is going to contain about 5,400 people in each area. And we do get to use a 10% variance, so plus or minus 540 people. And when we are drawing these areas, we are using census blocks provided by the Census Bureau, which is the smallest geographic feature. And we also have the demographic breakdown as well. So the total population for the Hispanic Latino community is about 12%, the white population being 66%, African American 5.28%, and the next largest demographic group is the Asian population at 10.86%. And then next column over, we do have the numbers for those who are 18 years and older, and that number comes out to be 20,785. And we're really going to focus more on the citizens voting age population, also known as CVAP, or your eligible voters. So these are all your voters within the school district boundaries. On the left, on the map, you see the Hispanic Latino citizens voting age population. So the lighter colors representing less dense areas, and the darker colors representing more dense areas of the Hispanic Latino community. So you can see that there's no real concentration of this demographic group within the school district. So the whole objective is to increase the percentages that you see in the table next to the map. So the goal would be ideally to have a 50% majority, but seeing that there is no real concentration, we would like just to increase the percentages to the high teens or maybe in the 20s. So the total eligible voters within the Benicia Unified School District is 21,083 people. Also with their demographic, or yes, the demographic breakdown, the Hispanic Latino community being almost 12%, the white population almost being 68%, African American being at 5.16%, and the next largest demographic group is the Asian population, just over 10%, and so on and so forth. And then we also have the Asian citizens voting age population. It is the same table, different map. We're using blue this time, so don't be confused with the bay at the southern portion. It is water, not the Asian population. So also here, there is no concentration of the Asian citizens voting age population. So we'll see very similarly to the Hispanic Latino community, just a slight increase when we're drawing these areas. So here is just a general geographic profile of the school district and seeing how you would like these areas to be divided.
And this is just a map of major roads in the district. These are not carved up or anything. This is just showing essentially what the district looks like from above. But the point of tonight's meeting, if anyone has any comments on how they think the map should be drawn or what areas maybe should or shouldn't be connected, I think that actually might be the next slide. Yeah, so the type of feedback we're soliciting tonight is essentially, I'd like neighborhood X and neighborhood Y to be in the same area, or I think, the 780 or Second Avenue makes sense because it seems like a natural boundary in the district.
So after tonight's meeting, we are going to be drawing some maps, and we are going to be using the 2010 census again. We are going to be using the total population, and we're going to be counting everybody ages 0 to 150, and splitting everybody equally amongst each trustee area, and they don't necessarily have to be a citizen to be counted in the total population count. So we also get the 10% deviation that we'll also be using. And some more criteria and guidelines while we're drawing these areas is that it must comply with the US Constitution, achieve population equality, comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, be geographically contiguous, keep local communities of interest together, be compact as much as possible, and it cannot favor or discriminate against an incumbent or a candidate.
And in terms of the census data, the population, the total population numbers are based on the 2010 census, but the updated citizen voting age population is based on a rolling average from the Census Bureau. So that data is updated as of 2017. Final thoughts, this doesn't change the district's overall boundaries, doesn't change school attendance boundaries, doesn't change how the board governs the district. It's still one goal with common challenges and common goals. The schedule here, this is the second pre-map public hearing. Then sometime later this month, the demographer will draw maps and they'll be published on the district website. And thereafter, there'll be 3 additional public hearings where the presentation will be similar to this, but instead of ending here, we'd have 2, 3, 4 map options up there with different demographic data that goes with those options for public comment on what folks like or don't like about them or suggested changes. And then finally, before we start the public hearing, because this is 2019, the census will come out in 2021. And unlike this large drawn out process that we're in right now, after the census comes out, by then the district will have a map option that it will have used for the 2020 election. At that point, the demographer will impute the new data onto that map. And if we still have population equality, there's no need to make any adjustments. But if we are out of that 10% balance, minor tweaks can occur, but it's not a 5 public hearing process. It's a one-time, and it probably won't move all that much. So it's a much less complicated process than transitioning the entire system. Any questions?
Yes, hi. My question is, after the 2020 census figures are done and we have hopefully there won't be much of a change. I can't imagine that there would be that much of a change. What is the cost? I mean, I know what we're spending now. We have an idea of what we're spending now. What is the cost that we're going to have to pay in the 2020, 2021? Is it going to be the same as what we're paying now, or is it going to be a lot less?
It should be a lot less because the process is a lot less intensive. It's essentially a one-time look at the maps and then making a tweak and having one public hearing. So much less than the 5 or so that we've had, as well as much less work for the demographer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
From the demographer's perspective, Mr. Chandapong, what do we do about an area as we look at these maps? Waters End area is both yellow for high density Chicano Latino and also blue for high density Asian. So how do we decide how is that divided up if the areas are supposed to take into account high density for populations?
So based off the population, because we do have to go based off the total population, we'll split up each area. So for example, the Hispanic Latino community, you get that large yellow area. So we'll try to make that maybe its own area. Whereas the Asian population, it looks like it's more towards the northern part, but there's nothing really up there. So I would have to look at the population more closely and to see where they are to create an area where they're all together, just to increase the voting power as best as we can.
And it needs to make sense. You don't want to be drawing lines just to try to make this work. That's not how this is supposed to work. It's communities of interest. And that said, there may be an area where there is both increased influence for the Hispanic Latino population and for the Asian population, and that's fantastic.
Students, you have any interest or questions?
You have to come over to the microphone, honey. Say your name and then say your question.
Hello.
Very good.
Hi, my name is Abby Seaman, and I was wondering, when you're looking at the eligible voters, are you looking just at the household voters, or like taking population, are you looking at everybody within the house, or just those who are voting in the house?
So in terms of breaking, thank you for your question, by the way. That is a high-level question. In terms of breaking up the district into 5 areas, that's just total population, doesn't have to be an eligible voter, just every single person, about 5,400 per area. When we're looking at this data on this slide, the citizen voting age population data, you don't have to necessarily be a registered voter. It is just anyone who is a U.S. citizen and over the age of 18, essentially eligible to vote. So it's not necessarily, oh, there's this number of registered voters. It doesn't need to be a balance of that per area, just total population. But so that's how that works. If that, I think, hopefully answered. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? Okay. How about Mrs. Field and then Mr. Young?
Carolyn Fields, Benicia Middle School. The proposed maps that are going to be discussed on November 7th, will we be able to look at them ahead of time?
Great question. The question was, will the maps be available for review prior to the public hearing on November 7th? Yes. The law requires that they be posted at least 7 days before they're considered at a hearing. So I think absolute latest, they'll be posted by Halloween, probably before. And they'll be on the district's website.
Hi, Steve Young. I heard you say that the trustees would serve out their current terms. So if that's the case, I don't know where the trustees live, but if there's a case where 2 of them live in the same district, and I don't know what they've decided when these district elections are going to kick in, say it's 2020. If one of those districts has more than one trustee, and one gets elected as a district representative, and now there's 2 trustees living in the same district, there will be another district without any representation. How is that going to be handled, and what happens at the end of that person who's 2 years out from election? When they have to run, they're going to run against a sitting trustee who's already been elected.
Thank you. So that scenario occurs quite often where trustees may end up being paired in the same trustee area. In that scenario, it would depend on the term left of the trustee. So if 2 trustees, let's say they're next door neighbors and their terms both expire in 2020, and that area is open for election in 2020, only one of them can win, or anybody else in the community who runs. So that will eliminate the double up, and one of the open areas would likely be up for election as well. If there's an area where there's a 2020 and a 2022, and when I say 2020, I mean their term expires in 2020 or their term expires in 2022 because they were elected last year, in that scenario, that area will not be up for election in 2020 because there already will be someone holding that seat. So the person whose term expires in 2020 would not be allowed to run until 2022. So their seat, they would serve out their term and it would expire.
That's a good question.
Just give us your name, please.
Lisa DeLorfis, Mary Farmer. My question is, if you have an area that has a seat available, what happens if no one runs in that area?
Thank you. So if there is a vacancy or nobody runs, it's the exact same procedure as when the board would have to fill a vacancy now. The only difference is they'd have to appoint someone who lives in that area. And there's, I think, a board bylaw, I want to say it's 9223, that explains exactly how to fill a vacancy, which requires probably putting out notice in the media, et cetera, prior to making an appointment.
Probably the very same process that we just went through to bring Ms. Moss on board.
Yes.
We did. Any other questions or comments? So I have to ask one question about the map because I'm a little bit confused. I'm looking at the Asian citizen voting age, and it shows a very heavy concentration along Lake Herman Road. Right. But it's also,
And there's nobody that lives out there.
it's not very heavily populated. As I recall, that's pretty much ranches. So,
So looking at this map,
and there's water. I know there's water.
this just shows for each census block the percentage, but
Uh-huh.
there might be some census blocks on here that only have a handful of people in them. So, generally the larger areas, there's actually probably less people living in them. So even though it might be a darker shade of blue, there may not be that many people there to begin with.
Okay.
Versus when you look at the Hispanic map, for example, down here, I'm going to imagine that there's more population in here. And so this may be an area of increased influence for the Hispanic Latino population.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions, comments? All right. Then, am I on? I'm on. So then I am going to say, oh, I'm sorry. Please come up.
Alan Zeta. So once the map is established, how does it get voted in by the public, or does the board decide on the final agreement on that?
Good question. So after the maps are published, the different options, the board ultimately, after 3 public hearings, will adopt a map option. However, thereafter, they will have to petition the county to approve of the transition. Unlike a city, the city can just pass an ordinance at that point and say, now we have trustee area elections. Because school districts are ultimately governed by the County Office of Ed, the County Committee on School District Organization will have to approve the transition. And in theory, they could change it, but it's very, very rare. Sorry, you asked about an election. What the Ed Code then calls for after the county approves is an election within the district, not for which map is the best map, but for just generally, does the community want to even make this change? However, the Ed Code permits the school district to seek a waiver of that election requirement because elections are costly, they take time. If the community votes it down, you would then remain exposed to CVRA litigation. So 99.9% of school districts obtain a waiver. It requires reaching out to the unions, et cetera, just to kind of get an okay for that. And then the state puts it on their consent agenda.
And then actually it would go into effect for the November 2020 election, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Young, come on up.
So a follow-up to that answer you gave me about the overlapping terms. So I think you said that if somebody was up for election in 2020, of course, they're going to have to run in 2020. Is that right? Or they're not even going to be allowed to run?
It would depend. If a board member's term expires in 2020 and they're either in their own area or in an area with another candidate or trustee whose term expires in 2020, that area will likely be open for election in 2020. But if they're in an area that is drawn and adopted with someone who still has term left, they can finish their term, but there will not be an election in that area because the point is to ultimately, as quickly as possible, but likely over 2 elections, end up with 1 per area.
So the trustee up in 2020 can't even run?
Unless they were to move and then establish domicile in a different area.
Any other questions? That kind of puts it, I know. Yes, it does. All right, then at this point, I think I'm going to say thank you very much since there's no other comments from the public. And I am going to close that public hearing and then we will have another public hearing once the sample maps are drawn. Thank you. Okay, so the hearing is closed. I'm going to reopen the board meeting. And we are going to get on to 12.2, which is the first reading of multiple board policies.
So every month, the Board Policy Review Committee gets together. Just as a reminder for everybody, we have 2 trustees, myself and Ms. Martinez. And we look at board policy updates that come to us from the California School Boards Association. And we diligently sort of chip away at those. Mostly every month they're modifications and updates to existing policies. Just quickly here, I know that you've had an opportunity to look at them, but we have Some updates under media relations, claims actions against the district, food service operations, employment status report, dismissals, suspensions, sexual harassment, training, world language, visual performing arts, international exchange, student language, and supplemental instruction. The one that I did want to point out that's new, and we will be working with staff around this to make sure that we understand it, and it's around maintaining appropriate adult-student interaction. So this is new ed code, it's a new board policy, and it's all the things that we do as a district, but there are a lot of really good and important reminders in that board policy. So we'll be reviewing that with staff. So we just bring those tonight for
Any other comments from anyone about the policies? Okay, this is just a discussion section, so we're not doing any voting at this time. And right now, so we're going to move on to the next discussion item, which is our local control accountability plan, better known to all of us as LCAP.
Okay.
Dr. Beatson.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here to just sort of remind you of what our LCAP process is, what it currently is now, what our process is for rewriting, and then some look into the future of what's coming. So, as always, we frame all the work that we do. As you know, our LCAP is our district strategic plan, and so we always start with a reminder of where we want to go. What's our ultimate goal, our vision, our beliefs, our values, and our desired characteristics for a student, because that really, we have to always measure up what we have in our LCAP against these items to make sure that we're getting where we want to go. Distilled down from that, we developed 2 wildly important goals. You've seen these before. All students reading on grade level by the end of their 3rd grade year, and then maintaining that grade level as they go through the grades. And then all students feeling a sense of belonging and connectedness to their school community. So just a more laser-like focus out of our big LCAP goals. And the other thing in the box down at the end of this slide is just a reminder that we are in differentiated assistance for 2 particular groups. One is students with disabilities for their academic performance in both English and math and their suspension rates. And then our students who are African American, again, for their academic performance and chronic absenteeism, which is 10% of the number of days we are in school for unexcused absences. So that number changes as we acquire more days of school. So how did we get here? What is the strategic plan LCAP? It went into law in 2013-14 as sort of a companion to the local control funding formula. So it's an accountability plan. State gives us money. How are we spending it to meet what goals? It comes with a particular template that we have to use, and it has both strategic plan goals, vision in it, and compliance components as well. We work really hard in this district to not have it be a shelf document, but something that really drives the work and tells the story of the district. And it is a roadmap for us for continuous improvement and cycles of review. Linked on here, where it says BUSD progress report, we don't need to look at it now, but it is just a year-to-year glance at some of the metrics in the LCAP and how we're doing. Some of it is still embargoed, so there are just placeholders in there, but that is something that we use to just track our year-to-year progress. The LCAP, as it stands now, is a 3-year document. We are wrapping up the end of this 3-year, but I always like to take a moment and kind of tell you about the layout. It starts with a 3-year plan summary. I always call that the cliff note. So if you don't want to read the whole thing, it has what's our greatest strengths, our areas of needs, and different kind of summary components there. Then there's a section called the annual update, which is basically, you said you were going to do these things. Did you do them? You said you were going to spend this money. Did you spend it? There's a big section in here called Stakeholder Engagement, and that chapter, if you will, is really about how do we solicit feedback from our community, from our teachers, from our students, from our parents, from our unions. And so we've done that in a variety of ways over the year. And we have our really great El Capitan committee now that we meet, and we'll be having a meeting coming up shortly to really help move that process along and get that word out. Then there's a section in our current LCAP on goals, outcomes, actions, and budgets. And that is where we have our big 3 goals and lots of actions to meet those goals. And there are 8 state priorities that we have to show that we meet. And then for each of those priorities, there are metrics that we have to track. And there are 23 metrics, though I was just at a meeting at the county and they said there's really more than 40, because once you break each metric down by student group, there's more than 40 different pieces of data. And that's just what is required, not anything that's local. And then there's another big section, which is students, services, for unduplicated students. And remember, those are our English learners, our foster youth, our homeless youth, and our socioeconomically disadvantaged. And we get some funding, a small bump in funding called supplemental funds that have to be principally directed to increase and improve services for those groups of students. Okay. The other 2 items over to the corner, because the LCAP needs additional documentation. We have something called a federal addendum that we have to submit every year by July. And that is sort of a bridge document. You approve this as well. It's a bridge document between the federal report that we do and the local report. And then there's another one that we have to write, and it's called the LCAP Parent Overview, which sort of just summarizes in a more parent-friendly, community-friendly way what's in the LCAP. So there are 3 sort of parts to this document. I think I just went over this here. So just quickly, I just want to remind us what our current goals are. We have 3 big goals in our district. Goal 1 is really the biggest goal, and it has to do with instructional practices, professional development, access and equity, and social emotional wellness. So most of the state priorities and metrics live in this particular document, as do the, or in this particular goal, as do the actions and services. Our second goal has to do with devices, infrastructure, facilities, and 21st century learning. So we have some actions and services, and then we also, because it's our strategic plan, write in this section about our bond. And so while that's not LCFF money, when we try to really kind of round out the story for our district, that lives in goal 2. And then our third goal is around parent and community engagement and partnerships with parent organizations. And how do we engage our families in this work? So this year, our LCAP is written. You approved it last June. We are well on the way of implementing all of the actions and services and starting to track that data. And simultaneously, starting to plan for the next 3-year document. And so what's really different this time is the state is working on a new template for the LCAP. It will hopefully be approved by the State Board of Education in November. The intent is to simplify the document. I don't know if that's really going to happen, but some of the changes are, there's the plan summary, that sort of cliff notes, they're much more simplified. So they're not looking for pages and pages anymore of information. A really great change is that the annual update, and that's the part where we wrote, this is what you said you were going to do, and this is what you actually did. Right now it lives in a whole separate section. They are building it in, so if this is what you said, then your annual update will live right next to it, so you can read across, which just simplifies that whole process. Another piece we've had a lot of conversation about, because I do sit on the state LCAP revising committee, is about stakeholder engagement and what that looks like and how can we make that more meaningful and reflect all the different voices and information that we collect. So we're looking at that section and how we do that work. And then there there hopefully, what is proposed to the state board is that there's going to be two choices of how you write the actual goal section of the LCAP. There's option A. Let me talk a little bit about option B first. Option B is sort of what we already have, these sort of big, broad goal statements that aren't really measurable, but they're big statements, and then we have lots of metrics underneath and actions and services. The other option, so that part kind of stays the same. The other option is to write more focused goals that are written more like a SMART goal, and they're focused and measurable. So you'd have 2, maybe 3 goals. There are some districts who have like 10, they've really expanded. So they're really trying to say, let's make this a very focused 3-year plan. You've got something that is really, you're in differentiated assistance or further down the line with that. Make it very focused and not try to do everything under the sun at one time. With that, there would be another section in there called your like maintenance goals. And the point is, remember back to there's 8 state priorities and 20 something metrics, is really trying to say, you know what, so let's take Williams Act. That's one of the metrics that we have to track. It's an easy track. We typically don't have an issue with it. That sort of can live in a maintenance section, so we don't have to do as much work and try to make these false connections to the goals. So after some discussion and thinking about what that would look like, that's what we're leaning towards, because we are in differentiated assistance and we want to make sure that we're really focusing this work, and we'll be able to tuck a lot of this work under some really focused goals and be really clear about the work that we're doing. A couple other changes is, of the budget. Right now, if you've looked at the LCAP, you have all the action pages, and then you turn, and then each budget they're on separate pages. So you're constantly sort of flipping back and forth, just like they're putting the annual update in alignment with the actions and services. They're putting the budget right there as well, which is a much easier way to do that work. And then there's some changes in the narrative. There's a whole bunch of narrative response questions we have to do, and one of the biggest ones is how the needs of English learners low in our unduplicated students were considered first before selecting each action. That's like, so some actions are district-wide or school-wide, but how do we take into account the needs of those students first when making those decisions? So that's some really trying to focus how we do this work. So that's kind of what's coming. What I've done so far is we've had lots of meetings. President Frucci talked about our district curriculum council meeting and our BAM meeting, and each time I'm trying to bring data and solicit input. What is this data telling us? What's the story behind the data? What do we need to focus on? And all of that information helps us, we'll compile all of that over the course of this year, and that helps us in our stakeholder engagement and helps us know what is the work that needs to show up in our LCAP. And that's, sorry, that I have a stakeholder engagement page, and those are all the groups that we're soliciting that input from. Any questions or comments? Thanks.
All right, thank you. Lots of work. Do we have any comments or questions? Any clarification needed? That is our last agenda item, so meeting is adjourned.